They dragged her into the great hall by the wrists, and she did not make a sound. The two guards on either side of her were twice her size, and they walked too fast on purpose, the way men do when they want a small woman to stumble for the entertainment of the court. She did not stumble. She kept her chin level and her eyes forward, and let her bare feet find the stone between the rushes. Blood from a split lip had dried at the corner of her mouth. She had not wiped it away. The guards threw her down at the foot of the carved wolf throne, and the chains at her wrists rang once against the flagstones, and the great hall, which a moment before had been roaring with the business of a king's morning court, went quiet. Halvar of the Iron Reach, Alpha King of the Northern Marches, had been listening to a grain dispute. He stopped listening. His wolf moved first, it always did. A low pull behind his sternum, sudden and silent, like a hand closing on the back of his neck. He had felt that pull twice in his life. Once when his father died, and once on the morning the hollow ledger had begun to thin. He had not felt it like this. This was not loss. This was attention. He set his goblet down on the arm of the throne with great care, because if he had set it down quickly, he would have broken it. What is the charge? His voice did not rise. It did not have to. 3 centuries of granite halls had been built to carry it. The mistress of the pantry, Lady Island of the Cold River Hold, glided forward from the petitioner's line in a gown the colour of spoiled wine. She had been waiting all morning for this moment, and her smile said so. "Theft, Your Grace," she said, and inclined her head with the sort of courtesy that was a small ceremonial knife. From the royal stores, caught at dawn with the door of the under-kitchens open behind her and her arms full. The guards have already sworn to it. By pack law, the punishment is the loss of the offending hand. A murmur ran the length of the hall. Halvar did not look at Island. He was looking at the woman on the floor. She was thin in the way of someone who had been thin for a long time. Her hair was the colour of wet birch bark, bound back in a braid that had come loose at the temple. She wore a servant's brown wool, mended at the elbow by a hand that had not had time to do it well. She was 22 winters at most, and she had the stillness of a woman 3 times that age. She was not afraid of him. That, more than the pull behind his sternum, was what stopped Halvar's breath. He had been the Alpha King for 4 years. He had inherited a kingdom in famine, and a curse he could not name. Every petitioner who knelt at his throne knelt with their eyes on the floor, because to meet a king's gaze without permission was a death some Alphas chose to give. She was kneeling because the guards had put her there. Her eyes were on him. "Stand up," he said. She stood, slowly. The chains slid down her forearms. "Your name?" "Linnea, Your Grace. Of no house." "Of no house," he repeated, as if testing the shape of the lie. "And what did you take from my stores, Linnea of no house?" "Bread," she said. 6 loaves, a wheel of hard cheese, a jar of bone broth from the long shelf, 2 strings of dried apple. She did not lower her eyes. "I would have taken more, but the broth was heavy." Lady Island's smile sharpened. "She admits it, Your Grace, plainly. Hand the verdict, and the morning may move on." Halvar did not look at her. "And what did you do with the bread, Linnea of no house?" The hall went very, very still. It was not the question Island had prepared for. It was not the question anyone had prepared for. The accused did not, as a rule, get asked what they had done with the stolen goods. The accused got asked whether they were guilty, and then they were marked, and then the court moved on to the next dispute. Linnea looked at him for one long heartbeat, and Halvar saw, in that heartbeat, that she was deciding whether to lie. She decided not to. "I fed it to your pups, Your Grace," she said. "The orphan war pups in the lower levee. The ones whose mothers died in the wasting last winter. There are 19 of them in the hollow quarter. They had not eaten in 4 days." A sound went through the hall that was not a murmur. It was something more silent than that. The sound of 300 wolves remembering at the same instant that there were 19 orphan pups in the lower levee, and nobody had spoken of them in any council Halvar had sat through. Halvar's hand on the goblet did not tremble. He had not allowed his hand to tremble in front of court for 4 years, and he was not going to start. But something behind his ribs trembled, and his wolf, which he had thought fully muzzled by exhaustion, lifted its head and looked at the woman on the flagstones with an attention that bordered on devotion. "4 days," he said. "4 days, Your Grace. And the under-kitchens were open. The bolt was drawn, Your Grace. I did not break the door." He turned his head slowly toward Islam. The mistress of the pantry's smile had gone glassy. "Your Grace, the under-kitchens are kept under bolt by my own steward. If she found them open, it was because she—" "You will not speak," Halvar said, "until I ask you to." The hall held its breath. Islan's painted mouth closed. He came down off the throne. It was not the way kings descended from thrones. Kings descended slowly, ceremonially, with attendants. Halvar walked down the 7 steps the way a man walks across his own kitchen, and he stopped 2 paces from Linnea, and he looked at her face. She still did not look away. He had not been looked at in 4 years. He had been bowed to, knelt to, presented to, killed for, but not looked at. He felt the look behind his sternum, the way another man might feel a knife. It did not hurt. That was the strange thing. It did not hurt at all. "The charge of theft against this woman is dismissed," he said. Leland made a sound. It was very small. Halvar ignored her. "She is charged instead with a single new offence," he said. "Failure to bring news of starving pups to her king. The penalty for this offence is that she will return tomorrow at dawn and report to me directly on every other thing my court has failed to tell me. She will eat at my table while she does it. She will not be touched by my guards, by my stewards, or by any wolf in this hall, on pain of my personal displeasure. Have I been clear?" There was no answer. No one had ever needed to answer that question. Have I been clear? "Yes, Your Grace," said the captain of the guard, and the words ran the length of the hall like a rope being pulled tight. Halvar looked at Linnea 1 moment longer. "Strike her chains." The smith was sent for. The chains came off. Linnea rubbed her wrists once, slowly, and the bruising under the iron was older than this morning. He saw it. He filed it away. He turned, and he went back up the 7 steps to his throne, and he did not look at Islander as he passed her. He did not need to. The whole hall had seen the angle of his shoulders. He sat. He picked up the goblet. "Continue the morning's business," he said. "We were on a grain dispute." The grain dispute resumed. Linnea was led from the hall, not by guards, but by an old serving woman who had been weeping silently into her apron, for reasons no one had asked her to explain. Halvar listened to a man complain about boundary stones for a quarter of an hour, and he did not hear a word of it, and the pull behind his sternum did not loosen. And somewhere in the deep keep, in a room only 3 living wolves had ever entered, a hollow ledger lay open on its lectern, and a name that had been there yesterday was not there anymore. He did not yet know whose. The burdened crown was not a phrase Halvar used aloud. It was the phrase he used in his own skull, in the hour before sleep, when the size of what he had inherited pressed on his ribs. His father had died at the height of a famine that was supposed to be ending. The famine had not ended. It had thinned, deceptively, the way ice thins on a pond before it kills you. Halvar had taken the throne at 26 and inherited 3 things. A treasury more strained than the council admitted, a frontier where the eastern pacts had begun testing his borders, and a curse that no archive could name. Wolves were dying in their sleep. Not many. 1 in a season at first, then 1 in a moon, then, this past winter, 3. They went to bed unwounded. They did not wake. The healers found nothing. The master of provisions, old steward Garrick, who had served Halvar's father and had taught Halvar to read, had told him, gently and at length, that this was the slow tax of a long curse on the bloodline. That no Alpha King of the Iron Reach had ruled without one, and that the only known mercy was time. Halvar had not been raised to accept mercies he could not measure. He had asked Garrick to bring him the Hollow Ledger. Every Alpha King of the Iron Reach kept the Hollow Ledger. It was bound in black leather, and the leather was older than the kingdom. Inside, in a hand that changed each century, was written the name of every wolf under the king's protection. Each name was bound to its bearer by the old magics, the way a wedding ring was bound to a marriage. When a wolf died, the name faded from the ledger by the next dawn, softly, like ink being slowly drunk by paper. Halvar had begun reading the ledger every night. At first, he had read it to learn his pack. Then he had read it because the names were going faster than they should. He was reading it now. The lectern stood in his private library, 3 turns of stair below the throne hall, in a chamber whose only key hung on a chain around his throat. A single lamp burned. The names of his people ran in narrow columns down the long pages, and Halvar's finger moved down them, slow as a man counting bones. He came to the 3rd column on the left page, and he stopped. Old Bregga, wet nurse to 2 generations of war pups. He had spoken to her 3 days ago. Her name was the grey of paper. The ink was already gone. He stood for a long time without moving. Then he reached up to the chain at his throat and took the key off it and slid it back into the lock of the cabinet where the ledger lived. And he closed the cabinet, and he went up the 3 flights of stair, and he sent for Steward Garrick. He did not send for him to ask why the orphan pups had not been fed. He had not yet thought of the pups. He sent for him to ask why old Bregga had been alive on Tuesday and gone before Wednesday's dawn. Garrick came. Garrick was a thin, neat man of 60 winters, with hair the colour of wet stone and eyes that had taught a generation of princes to write their first letters. He took Halvar's hands when he entered, the way an old tutor takes the hands of a boy he has watched grow into something difficult. "My king," he said, "the wasting takes whom it takes. Bregga was full of years. Do not torment yourself." Bregga was 64, Halvar said. Her own mother lived to 90. She was not full of years. The bloodline curse. Why does it strike old wet nurses, Garrick? Tell me how a curse on my bloodline kills a woman who is not of my blood. Garrick's eyes were patient. They were always patient. Your protection extends beyond your blood, my king. The ledger holds the whole pack. The cost of the curse is paid by the pack. It was, Halvar thought, a very good answer. It was a very good answer, because he had already half believed it. Garrick had been giving him very good answers for 4 years. He said nothing else. He let Garrick take his leave. He went to his window and looked out at the hollow quarter, the lower levee where the orphan war pups slept, and he had no idea, yet, that they had not eaten in 4 days. He thought, instead, of a woman who had looked at him without permission and had not looked away. Linnea returned at dawn. She came through the small east door, escorted by the same weeping serving woman, who turned out to be called Mira and to be the housekeeper of the underkitchens, and to be the one who had drawn the bolt for her. Mira left her at the threshold of the morning hall and made a small bow that was half a benediction and went away. Linnea walked into a room that had been emptied for her. Halvar was already there. He had been there for an hour. There was bread on the table, and butter, and a pot of honey, and a pitcher of milk still warm from the cow, a wedge of soft cheese, the long winter sausage, a bowl of late apples. There were 2 chairs, and no servants, and no guards. He stood when she came in. He had not stood for a guest in 4 years. "Sit," he said. She sat. She did not eat. He poured milk into her cup. He did not pour any into his own. "Eat first," he said. "Then we speak." She looked at the bread for a long moment. Then she looked at him. "Your Grace, the pups in the hollow quarter have been fed since first light. 6 wagons. I sent them myself before the cock crowed. There is cooked stew in iron pots, and bread in baskets, and enough for a week. Eat." A small sound came out of her. It was not a sob. It was the sound a wolf makes when it lays down a weight it has been carrying for so long it has forgotten how to set things down. She ate. She ate the way a person eats who has been giving food away for months, not greedily, but with the careful attention of someone who knew what each bite cost. He watched her hands. They were red at the knuckles, cracked from cold water and lye. When she had eaten enough that the colour had returned to her mouth, she set down the bread and folded her hands in her lap. "Ask me, Your Grace. Why did no one tell me about the pups?" "Because no one in your court goes to the hollow quarter," she said. "It is below the lower levee. It is where the ones with no mothers and no fathers and no house go. There has been no pack mother appointed since old Bregga fell ill. There is one woman, the smith's widow, who comes to feed them when she can spare it. I came when I could spare nothing." "How long have they been hungry?" "Hungry, Your Grace, or starving?" The pull behind his sternum tightened. "Both. Hungry since the harvest, starving since the first frost." Halvar set his hand flat on the table. He did not speak for a long moment. When he did, his voice had a flatness in it that he had not allowed himself in 4 years. "Why are the royal stores full?" "They are not, Your Grace." He looked up. "I spent 2 months in those underkitchens," she said quietly. "I was sent there as a debt servant by my mother's household, the autumn after she died. I scrubbed the long shelf, and I counted the jars, and I watched what came in and what went out. The stores you have been told are full of what is not food. The grain bins are weighted with chaff. The salt meat barrels are stacked 3 deep at the front and 1 deep behind. The wheels of cheese on the high shelf are wax. I have seen the steward order the inventory rolls written in fresh ink each new moon." "Which steward?" She hesitated. It was the first hesitation he had seen in her, and it told him more than her answer would. "The mistress of the pantry, Your Grace, Lady Eastland." He did not move. "You are accusing my court's mistress of the pantry of falsifying the royal inventory?" "I am, Your Grace." "You understand what happens to a debt servant who accuses a noblewoman in this kingdom?" I do. And you came back at dawn anyway? I came back at dawn anyway, Your Grace. Halvar looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. He was the most powerful wolf in the Northern Marches, and he had not, in 4 years, met anyone who would say a difficult thing to him without burying it in courtesy first. He felt his wolf settle inside his ribs, the way a hound settles at the foot of a bed it has been looking for. Linnea of no house, he said softly. What else? There is something wrong with your library, Your Grace. He went very still. You have a black book, she said. I do not know its name. I have only seen the chamber once, when I was sent to mop the lower stair after a flood. The cabinet was open. I saw the book. I saw a hand at the lectern that was not yours. His mouth went dry. Whose hand? I could not see, but the hand was writing in the book, Your Grace. It was crossing names out. He did not bring her to the library that night. He brought her to the library at the hour before dawn, 3 days later, after he had watched Garrick at every meal, after he had watched Elander at every council, after he had quietly asked the captain of his guard, a woman named Bryn, the wolf line of his mother, to count the bolts on the under-kitchen doors and report only to him. Bryn had counted them. There were 2 bolts. One was Islander's. The other was a bolt Halvar had never been told existed. It hung outside the steward's door, Garrick's door. Halvar took Linnea down into the library at the hour before dawn. He brought a single lamp. He brought the chain from his throat. He unlocked the cabinet. He set the hollow ledger on its lectern, and he opened it. Tell me what you see. Linnea bent over the page. Her braid had come loose at the temple again. He had begun to think of her hair as a thing that did not stay where she put it. He set the lamp closer. Names, she said. Hundreds of names. They are not all the same age. Some of the ink is old, some is... She stopped. Some is what? Some is wet, Your Grace. He looked. A single line, halfway down the right-hand page. The name beside it was Aldis, second daughter of the smith of the Hollow Quarter. 6 years old. The strike through her name was crossed in ink that had not yet dried. Halvar did not breathe. The hollow ledger had recorded death for 300 years. The names faded on their own, gently, drunk into the paper by the slow magics. They did not get crossed out by a hand. He had not, in 4 years of reading the ledger, seen a single name struck through. He was looking at one now, written in the hour before dawn. It is being written in, Linnea said quietly. Your grace, your curse. Your curse is not a curse. Someone is killing your pack with this book. The lamp flickered. Behind them, very softly, the door of the library opened. It opened on its own hinges, because the latch had been left raised, because Halvar had wanted both his hands free for the ledger. The thing that came through the door first was a smell. Old leather oil. A particular oil, distilled from a plant that grew only in the eastern marches. Halvar had smelled it on the gloves of eastern emissaries his entire life. He had also, he realised, smelled it on Garrick's gloves every morning since he was a boy. He did not show his hand. He could not show his hand, because the man who had taught him to write his first letter was the man whose oil he had just placed. And Halvar, who was 26 and drowning in a kingdom, and had loved Garrick like a father since his own father had died, could not yet make himself believe it. He let Linnea leave the library by the inner stair. He locked the cabinet. He closed the ledger inside it. He went up to the throne hall and called a small council, and he watched Garrick's face at the council, and Garrick's face was the face of a man who loved him. Halvar went to bed, and he did not sleep. In the morning, Lady Eastland was found in her own chambers, with the inventory rolls open before her, and a small dagger sunk neatly between her ribs from the back. The dagger was Eastland's own. The court called it a noble woman's shame. Halvar called it a silenced witness. Bryn, the captain of his guard, called it nothing aloud. She came to him in his solar and said only, "Your Grace, the dagger went in at an angle no woman of her height could reach on her own back. Whoever told you she did this to herself is lying to you." He nodded once. He did not ask who had told him. He already knew. He sent for Linnea. She came not as a debt servant now, because he had, at the last council, declared her of his household. She came in a dress of charcoal grey that Mira had altered in a single night, and she came without escort, because the wolves of his keep had learned in 3 days not to put their hands on her. And she came into his solar and stopped at the threshold and waited. "They killed her," he said. "Islander, to stop her from confessing the inventory." "Yes, Your Grace." "It was Garrick." "Yes, Your Grace." "Why?" he said. "He raised me." She did not answer. She did not have to. He had not really asked her. He had asked the room. He stood at the window for a long time. The hollow quarter was below him, smoke rising from the cook fires Linnea had ordered relit, a sound coming up the rocks that he had not heard in his keep in 2 years. The sound of Pups. Pups laughing. "He has been killing them," Halvar said, "with the book, for 2 years. The book is older than him, Your Grace. He did not make the curse. He found a use for it. How does he use it? I do not yet know. But I know this. The strike-through I saw was in fresh ink. Whatever he is doing it physically. The book is not killing on its own. It is a weapon, and he is wielding it." She turned from him then, and went to the table, and laid both her palms flat on the wood. "Your Grace, there is something you have not told me about the ledger." "There is much I have not told you about the ledger." "Has a name ever been written into it, rather than crossed out?" He looked at her. "It is a closed book," he said. "A name appears when a child of the pack is born. The book writes it. No hand has ever added a name to the hollow ledger. So you believe. So 300 years of Alpha Kings have believed. Your Grace," she said, "if a name can be struck out by a hand, then a name can be written in by a hand. If you are with us this far, set a small mark on the post. The listening pups appreciate it more than you know. Now back to the keep." He had been about to test it. He had been about to take a quill and his own blood and write a name back into the ledger to see if the magics would obey, when the second blow fell. Garrick struck before Halvar could. 3 things happened at once. The first, Bryn's second in command, a young beater named Osric, was found at the foot of the watchtower stair with his neck broken and his sword unsheathed. He had been climbing toward Halvar's solar. Bryn knelt by the body for a long time and did not weep. And when she stood up, she said only, "He was bringing you Garrick's coded letters. The pouch is gone." The second, a rider came in from the east border, half dead in the saddle, with the report that 3 eastern war parties had crossed the river in the night. They had crossed at the exact ford the steward had told Halvar was being watched. The third, a bell rang in the lower keep that no one had rung in Halvar's lifetime. The bell was the hollow ledger bell. It rang when the book itself was disturbed. By the time Halvar reached the library, the lectern was empty. The hollow ledger was gone. So was Steward Garrick. So was Linnea. He stood in the empty library, and the lamp was guttering on the lectern, and there was a single drop of fresh black ink on the floor, and he could not, for the length of 3 breaths, make his lungs work. Then he made them work, and he sent for Bryn, and he saddled his own horse, and he rode. The forest border between the Iron Reach and the Eastern Marches ended at a circle of standing stones. The stones were older than the kingdom. The alphas of the Iron Reach had been crowned at them since the first one, and Halvar had been crowned at them 4 years ago, in a winter so cold the ink on his oath had frozen before it dried. Garrick had taken Linnea to the stones. Of course he had. The hollow ledger was an instrument of the old magics, and the old magics had to be wielded at a place the magics knew. Halvar had been brought to the stones at his coronation. Garrick had been the man who lifted him to the central altar when his father's bones were not yet cold. Halvar came over the ridge alone. Bryn and a half-score of warriors held the tree line at his order. He had not wanted the pack to see what he was about to see, in case he could not bear it. Linnea was on her knees at the central stone. She was not chained. She did not need to be. Garrick had a slim, curved knife at the hollow of her throat, not against the skin, 3 fingers away, the way a man holds a knife when he wants to be gentle and to be obeyed. The hollow ledger lay open on the altar before her. A small clay pot of fresh ink stood beside it. A quill rested across the page. Garrick saw Halvar at the ridge, and Garrick smiled. The smile was not cruel. That was what made it terrible. It was the smile he had given Halvar at 7, when Halvar had finally written his own name without help. "My king," Garrick called. "Come down, let us speak." Halvar came down. He came down slowly, his hand on the hilt of his sword, but not on the blade. The pull behind his sternum was loud now. It was not pulling toward Garrick, it was pulling toward the woman on her knees, and the pull said, "She is alive, she is alive, she is alive." He stopped 4 paces from the stone. Linnea's eyes met his. She was not afraid. She was angry. He had not seen her angry yet. He filed the look away, in the place behind his ribs, where he kept the things he meant to live for. "Why?" Halvar said. Garrick tilted his head. "Why what, my king? Be specific. There has been so much." "Why my pack?" Garrick's smile did not move. "Because your pack was the cost. Because the wasting kept you afraid. Because a king who is afraid leans on his teachers. Because a king who leans on his teachers does not look east. You serve the eastern packs. I serve a future, Halvar. Yours was not it. You raised me." "I did. And you grew kind. And kind kings lose kingdoms. I tried to harden you. I tried, my king. 2 years of small mercies, old wet nurses, smiths' daughters, men who would not have lived another decade, to teach you that power costs. You did not learn. You sent 6 wagons to the Hollow Quarter at dawn for a thieving girl. You tipped your own scales for a thieving girl. You forced my hand." "And the pups," Halvar said. "Islander's stores, the starving pups." "Islander was a lever," Garrick said, almost regretfully. "She kept the stores thin so that the pack's hunger pressed on you. She did not know about the ledger. She would not have approved." He shrugged. She approved of very little. Linnea, on her knees, had not moved. Her eyes were on the open page. She said, very quietly, "He is going to write your name, Halvar." It was the first time she had used his name. He felt it land like a hand on his chest. Garrick's eyes flicked to her. "Quiet." "He has the quill ready," she said. "He has fresh ink. The knife is the threat. The book is the kill. If he writes your name, the magics will take it before dawn. He has done it to 19 wolves in 2 years. I saw it last night. The strike-through was wet." Garrick smiled again. "The clever girl. I will miss her." He drew the knife back from her throat to write. That was his mistake. Linnea moved. She did not go for Garrick. She went for the book. She lunged across the altar and slammed her palm flat onto the open page, and her palm came up bloody. She had cut it on the quill nib in the same movement, fast and deliberate, a debt servant's trick of opening a hand on a sharp thing without flinching. And she dragged her bloody palm down the page. A name appeared under her hand. It was not crossed out. It was written in. It said, "Halvar of the Iron Reach." The air went out of the clearing. Garrick's smile broke. "What of you?" "You said a hand could cross a name out," Linnea said. Her voice was shaking now. Finally. Finally. But not with fear, with effort. "I said a hand could write one in. He had no name in your book, Garrick. The Alphas of the Iron Reach were never bound to the ledger. They were the ones who held it. He was outside its reach. And you have been writing names in the spaces around him, and now..." She pressed her bleeding palm down harder. "Now he is in it, with the rest of his pack, with every wolf you have killed. And the magics know whose hand wrote him in." The hollow ledger trembled. Halvar felt it through his boots. He felt it through the flagstones a quarter mile away. The pull behind his sternum surged, and his wolf rose to the surface, eyes shifting copper, claws lengthening. For the first time since the morning of his coronation, his wolf rose without his permission, and he let it. He moved. He moved between Garrick and Linnea before the old steward could finish raising the knife. The knife came in. Halvar took it on the forearm, deliberately, because he wanted it out of Garrick's hand and away from Linnea's throat. The blade slid along his bone and stopped at the elbow. He closed his hand around Garrick's wrist and broke it. Garrick screamed. It was a small sound, and an old man's sound, and it broke something in Halvar that he had not known was still whole. Linnea was speaking to the book. Halvar did not understand the words. They were old. Older than Garrick. Older than the kingdom. Older than the stones. And he understood, in a flash of cold knowing, that Linnea of No House was not of no house at all. That the smith's widow who had fed her, the mother whose household had sent her into debt service, the brown wool and the cracked hands, had hidden something that had been waiting for this hour. Frost was crawling up her arm. It was crawling from her bloody palm, up her wrist, up the inside of her elbow, white as bone. Her breath was coming short. The cost, the curse, the magics, the binding that had let Garrick kill was fighting to survive. It was trying to take her with it. She did not let go of the page. "Linnea," Halvar said, and his voice cracked. "Hold him," she said. "Just hold him. The book is choosing." The frost reached her shoulder. She made a sound that was almost a laugh, almost a sob. The sound of a woman who had carried hunger for a year, and was carrying this too, and would not put it down. Halvar held Garrick by the broken wrist and could not look away from her. The hollow ledger flared. every name in it lit briefly like a candle catching. The struck-through names, 19 of them, burned brightest. And then the strikes themselves burned away, the lines crossing out the names dissolving into smoke. The names underneath stood whole again. Paper, not living wolves. He understood that. The dead would not return. But the curse that had killed them was unwriting itself. And under Halvar's bloodied name, written in Linnea's hand, a second line appeared on its own. Linnea of the Old Hearth, her real house. She fell. Halvar caught her before her shoulder struck the altar. Her palm was still on the page. The frost was already retreating, already pulling back down her arm, the cost paid and accepted. Behind them, Bryn and her warriors broke from the tree line, and they took Garrick, gently, almost reverently, the way you take a man who has been a teacher, and they bound him at the wrists, and they did not meet his eyes. The hollow ledger lay open on the altar between Halvar and the woman in his arms. It was no longer hollow. If you have been with us through this, leave a single word in the comments. The name of one wolf you would write back into a book. We will read them. Now, the last of it. He did not kiss her at the altar. He carried her down from the stones and back through the forest and into his keep. And he set her in the morning hall on a couch that had not held a person in 4 years. And he sent the healers, only the healers. And he stood at the door of the chamber until Mira told him for the 3rd time that the woman would live. And only then did he sit down on the floor of the corridor outside her door and put his head in his hands and breathe. Garrick was held in a stone room 3 floors below the throne hall. Bryn sat outside it. Halvar would speak to him. Eventually. Not yet. The court that had watched a thieving girl be dragged in by the wrists 9 days ago, gathered in the great hall in the hour after dusk. It gathered because Halvar had ordered it to. It gathered because rumour had come down from the standing stones the way rumour always came down from those stones, which is to say faster than any rider. He stepped down from the throne for the 2nd time in 9 days. He walked to the hearth in the council hall, the great hearth that had burned for 3 centuries and had been burning lower every season for 2 years. The hearth that nobody but Halvar had noticed was dying, and he held out his hand. Linnea, who should not have been on her feet, stood at his side. She had insisted. She put her bandaged palm on his. The hearth flared. It did not flare gently. It roared. 3 centuries of low-banking flame surged up to the chimney mouth and held, full and golden, the way it was said to have burned in the day of the first king. The court fell to its knees as one wolf, not because they had been ordered to, but because something in their wolves had fallen first. Halvar looked out over the hall. "My pack," he said. "I have been failed. I have failed you. The man who taught me to read taught me also not to look east, and not to look down, and not to count the names of my own dead. He will be tried. He will not be killed today, because vengeance kills the wrong things first. He will be tried before all of you, and we will hear what was done in the dark." He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. Lady Islan's stores were emptied to break us. The orphan war pups of the Hollow Quarter were starved to break us. Old Bregga was killed to break us. Aldis, the smith's daughter, 6 years old, was killed 2 nights ago to break us. 18 others before her. I name them tonight. Bryn will read the names. I will read the names. Every house in this hall will read a name. We will not let those names be hollow again. He turned. He looked at the woman beside him. She was still very pale. Her braid had come loose at the temple. Her bandaged hand was warm in his. "Linnea of the old hearth," he said, and the hall went still on her name. "Saw what I did not see, asked what I did not ask, came back at dawn when no one in this hall had the courage to come back at all. She broke a curse that has eaten my people for 2 years. She wrote my name into a book that no king of my line has ever been written into. She is not a debt servant. She is not a thieving girl. She is, by my word and my wolf, and the hearth that has just spoken for itself, the Luna of the Iron Reach. If any wolf in this hall wishes to challenge that, you may step forward now." No wolf stepped forward. He turned to her. His hand shook once. He did not hide it. "If you will have me," he said, low, "knowing what I am, knowing what I have failed, knowing that you owe me nothing. If you walk away, I will accept it. If you stay, I will spend what is left of my life trying to deserve the morning you walked back through my door." She looked at him. Her eyes were the steadiest thing in the hall. "I came back at dawn," she said softly, "because I had already decided." He bent his head. She rose to meet him. The kiss was short, and what broke open inside him was the 4-year weight of a crown that had finally found a second pair of hands. The court did not look away. The court cheered, and the cheer rolled like a wave up the stone walls, and the hearth at their backs roared. 3 months later, the hearth still burned at full height. The hollow ledger had a new chamber and a new keeper and a new law. Any name added or struck except by the slow magics was a death crime, on a king's word, witnessed by the Queen. Steward Garrick had been tried in open court and exiled north, beyond the white pines, where the cold did its own slow work. The eastern packs, having lost their hand at the Iron Reach's throat, had pulled back from the river and signed a hard peace that Bryn's company had drafted in her own hand. The Master of Provisions' chair was empty by decree until the council found a steward who had no oil on his gloves. Lady Islan's house had been quietly absorbed into the old hearth. Her younger sister took the small estate and ran it with a clean ledger. The orphaned war pups of the Hollow Quarter had a pack mother now, a fierce, small woman named Mira, who had once drawn a bolt for a thieving girl, and who had been given the title in the same ceremony at which a Luna had been crowned. The pups, full-bellied and loud, slept in a long hall that had been a granary in the time of Halvar's grandfather, and was a nursery now. Linnea read them their names from a small book of her own at every dusk. None of them had ever lost a name in their sleep. None ever would. A letter came up from the south, in the second month, from the household that had once sent a debt servant into the under-kitchens of the Iron Reach. It was an apology, of a sort. It ran 2 pages. It grovelled. It begged consideration. It addressed her as Your Grace, which she was, and as Lady, which she was, and as Linnea, which she had always been. She read it once. She set it on the hearth. She did not, in the end, burn it. She put it in a drawer. That night, Halvar found her at the great hearth in the council hall, alone, her hand at the small of her back where the scar from Garrick's knife was healing slowly. He came up behind her and did not touch her. He stood at the regulation 3 paces and waited until she turned. "Tell me a thing," he said. "I have wondered." "Anything?" "That morning, at my throne, when you told me what you had done with the bread. You decided whether to lie. I saw it. Why did you choose the truth?" She thought for a moment. "Because you asked," she said. No king had asked in 4 years what I had done with the bread. You asked. I thought if I lied to a king who asked, I would deserve to lose the hand. He let out a slow breath. He looked at the hearth. It burned full and gold. "Linnea of the old hearth," he said. "Halvar of the iron reach." "Stay." "I came back at dawn," she said. "I am not going anywhere." The fire popped once, gently, in the long hush of the hall, and somewhere below them, in the lower levee, 19 war pups slept, full-bellied, named and held. If this story moved you, leave a comment with the name of one wolf you would have written back into the book. Tell us where you are listening from tonight. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe. There is another one waiting at the next dusk, and you should not have to find it alone.